Hello everyone, welcome to Sketchcraft Tips, coloring with gradient maps. To do this, we will be using Photoshop. I'm using CS5, but I'm pretty certain you can use anything in the CS family. I'm pretty sure gradient maps go as far back as the first time they added adjustment layers, which I think was like CS1 or 2. So that's all you really need is this right here, the adjustment layers tab, right around bottom right-hand corner. So what are gradient maps? This is something I've recently sort of stumbled into as a way to get my coloring done pretty quickly. I want to be able to color my stuff much faster than I've been doing. Average time now is 6 to 12 hours. I was able to color this whole Batman from scratch, taking my time in 4 hours doing this technique. So I've cut that time down by a third. The last time I colored a picture like this with all the gritty pencils took 12 hours. That was the He-Man. Somewhere between 8 and 12 hours. So I at least cut my time down in half using gradient maps. So how can you do this? Let me show you. First, let's just go through character art, and then I'm going to show you how to do it using landscapes. So using character art, basically what you need is some line art, right? Which in this case, turn that off. This is my line art, right? Let me go ahead and add white here. And we will fill that in with white. So yay, we got some line art, right? So I'm going to just take that, set it to multiply. And then I already have some flats. Now these flats are made up of basic color. Everything's colored out so you can select it really easily. If I want to select the cape, if I want to select his clothing, his belt, these are colors that won't blend in with one another. So every little thing that needs to be selected can be selected individually. And then what I like to do is go ahead and set up a gradient map to grayscale, just so I can tonalize this out. How you create this gradient map is, hold on one second. You go right down here to adjustment layers, click gradient map. I already have black and white selected, so you can sort of see a makeshift. It just basically, what it's doing is, how do I explain this? If you double click the little icon here, you're going to get this menu that pops up. It shows you gradient map. So this is a gradient. It defaults to whatever's in your foreground and background color already selected. So if you had colors in these, it's going to select colors. When you click on this, you can adjust the gradient map just like you would any other gradient in Photoshop. Like I can select from my list of colors here, right? And what it's doing is Photoshop is saying anything over here is black and everything over here is white, and anything in between is going to look like this. So you can see, because this is flat art, everything's a big flat color. In this case, I'm going to pick, black and white. We'll go ahead and use the one I set up. I like to not go for pure black at first. It's a little darker, so it's really more like the way I have it set up on this is that it's sort of to a light gray and to an almost black. So 10%, in Copic terms, if you were using markers, you'd think Copic markers, 10%, 90%. So give yourself a little bit of wiggle room. And then underneath, I'm going to actually add all my shadows. So if we extrapolate that, turn that on, you can see here, I've turned all this off. I just went right in and started making one shade layer, right? So I'm doing the lighting in black and white, adding in all these basic light sources. Now you don't want to get too perfect, like 100%, everything's finalized. You really just want to get the mood, the tone set up. Like here's all this basic stuff. I also like to make sure I have a brightness set up to about 10%. Here's an adjustment layer right here. And once that's done, you can start to add in color. So what I'll do is add another folder for gradient maps. Let me turn all this off. And I'm going to start to work out, I think the background I started to work on first, the overall lighting, which was this orange scheme. And then I did his. So how do I know his skin tone should be like this? What I recommend doing is making a thumbnail before you start. a little color thumbnail, and then you can sample from that colors. This time I was doing it in my head because I've done this enough times to know how to do it. But what you can start to do is create, like I knew I wanted a maroon background, orange lighting, and I'm gonna have this green undertone. So I was able to go in and know that his costume is gonna be gray, and then I'm gonna have these green undertones, these lighting. He's gonna be underlit from a green light source. And then all I did was select his uniform from my flats and mask it out. So if I disable the mask, it looks like this, right? But if I enable it, boom, now he's basically set up, his skin tones. Then I got, here I got the background, a lot of the background stuff set up with the same exact gradient map, but I've toned down the opacity a little bit so it blends in with the coloration of the city. And then I made one for his cape that slightly had more contrast, so it's a little darker. It's got the greens you can see. And then here I set one up. What's that for? That's for his belt, so it's a little bronzish, right? And what's cool is you can save all these gradient maps. So if you say you're doing a bunch of, say you're coloring Batman, you're using Batman all the time, you can then save, belt. Like these haven't been named, but this would be belt, skin tones, da 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 da. And all I did was just create these gradients, and then this right here is a little bit of the glow. Like I created this giant, uh, this orange to yellow, and then I just airbrushed in some of the lighting. And so I didn't do any of these blending. I didn't go pick green and try to massage it in there and pick purple and massage it in there. All I did was color it in black and white and then enable gradient maps and just slid them around until I got the color scheme that I wanted. And then, so what you want to do after that is the gradient maps really are good for a base. You want a nice base color. And then you paint on top of that in color, which is how I arrived with this folder. This is where you add all the extra details, lighting. Like if we turn these off, come right into here. And these are my rim lights, right? So these are solid colors set to glows. So you can see this is actually a glow after effect. It's just cream with an orange glow added on, right? And then there's an underglow and his eyes. And then you can see I've just painted in all these extra details on top of the gradient maps, which is the fun part, honestly. So we can add a little bit of a screen layer. So these are just little lining bits and stuff that I'm comfortable with doing. And when everything is done, there, we can set it back up. Everything's turned on. There we go. I did do some atmospherics. I got some extra glows going on there. But the majority of this is colored using gradient maps. Why is this important? Well, here's a few things. Blending all these colors in manually, that's really time consuming. Two, if I need to go in and make changes, let's say this was in production and you're designing characters and they go, well, we want this character to have a yellow gauntlet instead of a gray gauntlet. You don't want to go and do a bunch of trickery, like you got to tonalize it and repaint over it. You just go in the gradient map and slide it around, and you can start to build a nice little folder of just colorations like armor, cape, belt, earth tone, rock, and use the gradient maps to get you a base color on top of your tonal art, and then paint on top. So to reiterate, let's see what that looks like in a landscape painting. So this is a Mario painting that I did by hand about a year or two ago. And all these colors are manually painted in. This was a little sketch I did in pencil, scanned it in, and then I manually colored all these green and yellows. There's a speed paint of it, so you can see me paint in color. So I thought, well, what if I just tonalize this and try to get a base coloration going using gradient maps for landscapes? So what I did first was create a black and white layer, like I did before. Added a little brightness contrast, just to pump the contrast up a little bit. And then built a grass gradient map. If you look here, if we just double click on this, you can see I sampled from my initial color scheme of yellow is the highlight, green is the middle, a little bit of this teal blue, and then a deep navy. and just started to manually with my paintbrush paint this in. So now what you don't want to do, right, is this where you make a fully complete tonal rendering, and then you're over here trying to like crop every little thing out. So what I would recommend doing is, you paint. Let's say for me, I want to do everything in 4 hours. 4 hours seems to be my total time. If I'm going to draw, I'm going to draw for 4 hours. If I'm going to color, I'm going to color for 4 hours. So at 4 hours, my total coloring time, I would do a tonal rendering for about 1 to 2 of those hours. Get it set up, and then drag in my grass and my rock colors, and then just block in, take, the middle hour. Say it was 1 hour to do the tonal, 1 hour to come in here and paint all this stuff in, and then have the next 2 hours to paint on top. So we can see I set up a sky, and I set up a water, which is slightly different in the gradient map. You can see it's a little bit more saturated. And some of these are set to color layers. Like normally this is set to normal, right? Normal. But the grass is set. No, the grass isn't. One of these is. Oh, some of these are set to color layers. So you can flip between normal and color. See which way you like it. I like to just set it to normal as much as possible. In water. And if we turn this on and off, you can see, yeah, there's a bit more contrast in the one I have, but like where it goes real hazy right here with the blue, I can paint that in using a darken or lighten layer if I want to lighten that up. So like I said, you wouldn't want to have to go in here and manually, carve out all these flowers. All these flowers and these yellow bits and these extra levels of detail and whatnot would be added on top. But it would be perfect. I mean, honestly, this solves a lot of time. Like it's just like it was actually a problem I ran into landscape with the landscape paints. Like, how can I get this done quicker in 4 hours and still get all this detail? Because this shit took 6, 8 hours, and a lot of it's like tedious. But to go in there and sketch all these details in, come in here. I mean, you could even like lasso tool really quickly if you wanted. Take your airbrush tool and just fade out the edges. And then paint in, you can blend in between the two, right? And look at that. I mean, that's a damn good way to start. Like, and then you can just build on top of it. So coloring with gradient maps. I'm going to be doing this a lot more. Matter of fact, I'll say this will be primarily the way I work moving forward. If you have any questions, please ask. I will make more of these as I go along, and I hope to see. Hopefully, these help you out too. Like this stuff's pretty dope. This makes the coloring fun and not tedious. So thanks for hanging out. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. I will answer anything you need, and I will see you next time. Gradient maps. Talk to you later. Bye.